Today I got a special one for you. This is Lange. Lange is a German, Norwegian, Scandinavian name, and the meaning behind it is reach for the sky. Today we're talking about Lange, the 110, but let me tell you the meaning behind the name. So Lange is a German, Norwegian, and Scandinavian descent, and it stands for reach for the sky. I felt it was a very fitting name since this build originally started in Germany, and we built it for a very special individual named John in Texas. And if you ever met this guy, you would understand why the meaning reach for the sky has a lot of meaning. Basically, it was just very fitting, and that's why I came up with this name. So Lange, the first thing you'll actually notice is the color. And I'll tell you, this color has been a big topic of discussion for us internally in the office, because we're doing a new 130 that will be for the show circuit. Show circuit, meaning it will be for me personally, because I sold Enzo a couple of years ago and I've wanted a 130 since, and we just simply haven't had time to build a new one. And I think we're getting caught up a little bit that I can actually get my own personal toy being a 130, because I love that body style. But of course I love a 110 and a 90, and that's why I always say you have to have multiples when it comes to owning a Defender. So this Helderburg is lifted. So I think that's very important. And what I mean by, and very important for the very simple reason, if you've seen some of the past builds like Sandoval, Dieter, Bruno, the list goes on, those are very noticeably lifted. This one's not as noticeable, but it has the same suspension lift as all of the other ones I just talked about. The difference is the size of the wheels and the size of the tires. So these tires are a little smaller. On the other ones, they're a little over 35 inches tall, tire beam, but they have a 45-degree offset. This has a 15-degree offset. And when I talk about offset, what I'm talking about is the wheel. How far is the wheel sitting off of the disc? And on the other ones, Bruno, Dieter, Sandoval, you'll notice that the tires stick out past the arches here. And this is the same arch that you will see on all those. Again, the only difference in this is the size of the wheel and the size of the tire. This is a 10-inch wide wheel versus the other ones I talked about is a 12.5-inch wide wheel. So it makes a huge difference. As far as rideability, if that's a word, you know what I mean though. The ride on this one is very nice. Anytime you start to lift the truck, you will start to feel a little different. I'm not saying it in a negative way, because it's definitely not in a negative way. It just feels different. So which do I prefer to drive? This is lifted, the smaller tire or the larger tire? And it's a hard decision. I definitely like the drive on both, and I like the looks on both. But here's the beautiful thing about what we've done here. If John decides he wants that bigger, bulkier look, all he's got to do is put a different set of wheels and tires on, and he has that look, because the suspension's already been set up for that lift, since it's approximately right at a 3-inch lift. And whenever we do a lift on any Helderburg, we do it proper. And that's really uncommon when it comes to the industry that we're in, meaning that when you see trucks, when you see Defenders that have been lifted, it's rarely been done properly. And what I mean by proper is whenever you lift a truck, you need to automatically change the prop shaft, because you're increasing the distance from the drivetrain to the actual, the drive shafts have to be longer. So prop shaft has to be custom designed. The radius arms, front and rear radius arms, have to have the proper degree of a bend, because what you're doing is when you lift, you're twisting your axles this way. So now you're starting to wear all your parts, your U-joints. It's just really hard on all the parts. So when you do the radius arms and you're turning everything back to the way it's supposed to be, basically a factory spec, then it takes the wear away from the parts, but it also makes the build a safer build, which I think is the perfect segue to tell you about R&D. That's something that, I had a client tell me that said, why don't you talk about the research and development? And I guess the reason that I haven't really talked about it is I kind of take it for granted, in the sense that when I originally started Helderburg, it was all started about research and development, because I love the looks of an iconic classic 25-year-old Defender, but I didn't really enjoy driving it. It was really slow. I would be in the right lane, everybody would be passing me. The steering was sloppy, that felt like you were driving a big truck or something, and it didn't have all the performance. Lucy's getting excited about the squirrels right now. Ignore the squirrel, don't even look at them. So anyway, so again, I love the looks, but driving was not as fun. It was only to the local corner store or something like that. I didn't really want to do any cross-country trips. So I started talking to a lot of people. The vast majority of everyone was in England, since that's where these trucks are from. And we started developing parts, everything from intercoolers, turbos, exhaust systems, radius arms, the list goes on. So that's how Helderburg started, was with the research and development. And to this day, we are still doing research and development. In fact, Will, my partner, and I, and two of the guys that work with us, we do a weekly call and we talk about projects that we're working on, because we're always developing new things when it comes to a Helderburg Defender. So, I have clients, prospective clients, they come to visit, they drive a Helderburg when they've driven other trucks, and they're like, wow, this is remarkable. This can definitely be a daily driver. It has the speed, it has the handling, it has everything. So R&D, research and development, is a huge part of what we do. Now, let me talk more about Lange. So I talked about the lifted, I talked about the smaller wheels and tires, I talked about the beautiful color. Boy, I keep on thinking maybe I should do this color on a 130. So you tell me in the comments, do you think this color would be a great replacement to Enzo number 2? By the way, I'm not going to name my 130 Enzo number 2. I have a very special name coming out. But what do you think? Should I do this color, or should I do something completely different? But anyway, I like the color a lot. We do have the full roll cage, and anytime we do a roll cage, it's unlike you'll see a lot of other roll cages. A lot of other roll cages are just hooked. They're not really roll cages, they're just cosmetic, and they're hooked to the body panels, and that's where it stops. It's just bolted to the body panels. Doesn't provide a lot of safety, and it's just not good for the body. Ours, there's holes. It's cut through the wings up here, and it goes all the way to the frame. And then the same thing, it goes all the way to the frame in the back here too. So this is a truly functional roll cage. And then this one, we did the roof rack itself. So by doing the roof rack with the roll cage and with this lift, it's not as high as Dieter, but this is approximately 87, 88 inches. And the suspension will start to settle a little bit, because if you look, you'll see that the rear is raised up just slightly, because I put a heavier duty progressive coil spring in the back to be able to carry weight, because John told me specifically what he was going to use this for on his ranch, and he is going to have weight in the back. This gentleman is definitely going to use this Helderburg the way it was intended to be used. But of course, every Helderburg is purpose built. That's part of what we do, is we talk through it in the design process. How are you going to use it? Are you going to camp with it? Are you going to use it on a ranch? Are you going to do cross-country driving? And then everything is purpose built. So again, that's why you see the back end tucked up a little bit, because he's going to have some of his guys in the back, or he's going to be carrying stuff in the back. So the proper coil spring to be able to hold that weight, and it will just take it a nice flat level. And there is a weight rating that we've come up with based on how he's going to use it. Talking about the coil springs, these are progressive coil springs. That's not a norm in the industry. And what a progressive coil spring does is it gives you a progressive ride, meaning that if you're going across, let's say the ranch, and it's very bumpy, the spring settles. It has a very good rebound and compression rate that it smooths the ride out. So you're not feeling it in the cabin. It feels like you're just gliding across those crazy ruts and everything. And then if you're on the highway and you're doing some traveling, then it does really well on the highway too. So that's the beauty of a progressive coil spring. Of course, it does have polyurethane bushings and it has the proper shocks. So this has the Fox shocks on it, which are very nice shocks. They're really designed a little more for an off-road enthusiast, meaning that they can take a lot of use and they don't overheat. Another shock variation we use a lot is the Bilstein shock. And then we have a new shock that we're working with right now. We're working with the developer of a new shock. That's part of our R&D that's coming out very soon. And that new shock allows you to do the setting for your compression, your rebound. And I've been testing it on one of my test trucks, which if you have not seen Vincent Red, definitely watch the video on Vincent Red because that thing is blistering fast. Anyway, so 5-speed manual transmission, heavy duty clutch in this one, and the interior is beautiful. You've seen this interior before. It's much like the interior on Bruno, but we did a couple little touches to it. This one does not have the wood floor in the back because he's going to be loading pallets of stuff in the back and the wood floor would just get demolished. Full LED lighting all the way around on the outside, so LED lighting, headlights, marker lights, and LED lighting on the dash, which again is not normal. And the one thing you'll notice about a Helderburg dash is the gauges have that iconic, I guess you can say, original vintage look, but they are far from vintage. They do have billet aluminum, which is a brushed aluminum dial around them. And then the lenses themselves is actually glass, so they're very nice. And then the canister itself of the gauge or the housing is truly metal. There's no plastic gauges when it comes to a Helderburg. So a lot of custom parts in here. Hinges, billet aluminum. These are custom milled billet aluminum. The door handles are custom milled billet aluminum. And just when you grab a door handle like this on the Helderburg, and you just grab it and you're like, wow, that really truly is different than the hard plastic Land Rover door handles. These are very durable, but they just have a very, let's just say, sexy feel to them. You can really tell the difference. So the glass in a Helderburg, of course, is thicker. And the reason that we do a thicker glass is for the heating, the cooling, especially John's going to be in Texas where it gets very hot. And then we have, of course, we have clients in Minnesota and me in New York, of course, so that thicker glass is much better for the insulation. So now we're at the front of Lange, and I'm going to point out a few things. If you've watched a number of my videos, you're going to see a lot of similarities. And the first thing being the metal grille. This is metal, this is not plastic, and this is handmade in Germany. And then of course the bump out. This is called an air con bump out, and it makes more room for the larger intercooler that's for the diesel engine here, but it also makes more room for the air conditioner condenser and the fan pack. Do we really need it? No, not really, but I appreciate it because what it does is it gives more dimension on the front end of the vehicle and just makes it a little more visually stimulating. The headlight surrounds here are billet aluminum. These are Helderburg exclusive. They have the Helderburg logo in there. But the point I'm really trying to make is these are metal. These are not plastic. I am not big on plastic. That's all there is to it. So these are hand milled. So billet aluminum, and then our signature headlights that I absolutely appreciate because it has the broken beam. These headlights also are not only just a driving light, but your turn signal is in here too. So you have your turn signal on the side, and then you have your turn signal built into the headlight too. So there's no mistaking when you're getting ready to turn. And I will tell you, I've had an individual apparently mistake that I was turning, and he bumped into my tire and totaled his car, and there was a scuff on my tire. But anyway, that's a whole nother side point. The bumper on itself, the bumper I absolutely love. I mean, this is some very thick metal and you can hear the sound of it. But I love the oval cutouts, which also matches the steering dampener guard under here. And then of course the red tow hooks for a little splash of color. So here's a question for you guys. I'd love to get your thought on this, but you will see the vast majority of every Helderburg that I do, I put the letters Defender on the bonnet. So here's a question. Do you prefer Defender? And then I've got one that's coming very soon that we're finishing up. And what I did, instead of Defender, I put Land Rover. So the question is, do you prefer Defender or do you prefer Land Rover? And then the third part of the question is, should I just not do Defender? Should I not do Land Rover? And maybe I should just do Helderburg. Me personally, I don't think I should do that because I just love the Defender name or the Land Rover name. I think it just kind of makes that iconic feel. So anyway, front end, and then of course it does have the Puma bonnet, which has the hump here, versus the original bonnet that would have been on this vehicle is a recessed bonnet that looks very, very classic, I guess you could say, which I rarely do. And then all the additional billet aluminum, so even the windshield washer sprayer is billet aluminum. So I think the interior speaks for itself. I really don't need to tell you a lot other than, John, I apologize right now. I will clean it before it comes to you because Lucy dropped some of her hairs and her little toe prints are in a few different places. Which brings the perfect point. Let's talk about the leather when it comes to a Helderburg leather. Again, this is part of the research and development that we've done for a number of years. There's no mistaking that I absolutely love dogs. And some people would think I like dogs more than I like people. I'm not saying that's true at all, but you can decide how you feel about that. But anyway, I do love dogs. I like to have I like to have Lucy and Leo with me, or years ago it was Enzo and Leo. But the point I'm making is the leather. This leather is not your standard upholstery leather. It's a much thicker leather. It's tanned in Scotland. It's tanned to order. But the point being is it's much thicker. And the reason that it's thicker is because I love dogs and I love big dogs and their nails can do a lot of damage. So early on, the damage would happen to the seats when they were climbing all over it. These seats, you can get in here, have a pin in your back pocket. Maybe you're the type that wears your phone on your hip or a knife or something like that. I'm not saying the blade will, not cut it. But the bolsters do not wear out. The dog's nails will not hurt it. That's something very special about a Helderburg, is the thicker leather. Contrast to color. So you've got the choices when you're designing a Helderburg. Do we do a single color or do we do a two-tone color? And my belief behind that is it needs to match the persona of the vehicle, that it's not always two-tone, because sometimes two-tone works and other times it does not. Wood steering wheel, it seems like the vast majority of everyone loves the wood steering wheel with the polished aluminum. And we have the option to do the polished aluminum or do the black aluminum with the wood itself. I think it's iconic. I think it's beautiful. And I've had some people ask earlier on, well, is it too thin? I'm like, no, it's not too thin. Again, everything is built to order. So when we're doing the steering wheel, it can have a different thickness to it. Therefore, if you have bigger hands, then we do a bigger wood steering wheel, and it's very comfortable. And it's not slippery either. I've had that question, but it's not slippery whatsoever. But of course, we could always do a leather wrapped steering wheel if that's what you prefer. Center cubby is a locking center cubby. This is a steel box. It is bolted to the body, and it's very, very solid. So you can put whatever in there and no one's going to steal it. And the squirrels are going crazy right now, which is driving Lucy crazy. Anyway. Again, LED gauges, a lot of billet aluminum. This does have the high fidelity audio system, so it's multiple speakers, it's an amplifier. The sound system in here is beautiful. It sounds wonderful, and if you've watched me for a while, you know that I love great audio and vinyl and all that. This doesn't have a vinyl sound. It's all digital. It sounds great. So what else can I tell you about it? Other than 5-speed manual, interior is plush. These seats are extremely comfortable. This one has seating for, of course, you can see the two in the second row, and 4 in the very rear because it has center-facing benches. If you have any questions about a Helderburg build, just reach out to us and we'll get those questions answered. Be sure to go to helderburg.com, find the tab that says FAQs, and then look at the videos. We have hundreds of videos that answer a multitude of questions, whether you're interested in what are the measurements, what's size, how do the D110 compare, insurance, the list goes on. So again, hundreds of questions, but if you have more questions, reach out to us. We're always available, and thanks for watching the video.